Welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, episode number 50. My name is Phil, and joining me as usual, I've got my partner in crime here, Rohan. How's it going?
Good, thanks.
And joining us, another fellow Aussie today, I've got Peter joining us. Hey, Peter.
Good morning, or good evening, Phil. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. There's lots of time zones going on at the moment, so we're all a bit all over the shop at the moment.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabokasa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
All right, I think we've got a new segment, Rohan. We're gonna bring in. It's what has the cloud broken this week for the Internet of Things?
Oh my gosh. And in this week's case, there's so much. Let's just jump right into it. There's, everybody's seen this, I think. It's been on the Home Assistant front page, so on Google to remove the Works with Nest program. So this is something personally I have an issue with. And it's funny because Phil and I were chatting offline, and, I was just saying when I did another YouTube recording, I was talking about, hey, I love the Nest thermostats that I have, the Nest Protects, and, it's great, blah, blah, blah. And then half an hour later, I found out that this program is going away. So essentially what this means is Google is basically restricting their API to only themselves, aka they're essentially removing their open APIs. And all the Nest accounts will be moved over to Google accounts, and third-party integrations like IFTTT, Home Assistant, and, pretty much everything else will stop working. So I have a problem with this personally, again, as somebody that owns 2 Nest Protects. And so now they want to be the hub of the home. And essentially, so in their mind, they say, okay, you can integrate with us rather than us integrating with you.
And so what really strikes me here is that they've scrapped this open API and they're moving everything to works with Google Assistant, but they're only allowing certain services and companies to be certified to work with Google Assistant. So, I think this really gives Google that sort of gatekeeper of who is good enough to integrate with these Nest products. And so, a little guy like Home Assistant that may not be able to afford a big licensing fee to Google to get access to that data may never be able to have an official works with Google Assistant integration that is capable of getting access to this data.
Yeah, exactly. And that also means that you won't be able to access the data from your own home. So for me, one of my things that I, believe in largely is I hate having more apps than I need to on my phone. So all of these different apps, I try and consolidate down to the Home Assistant app. And unless I really need to, see my Nest Protect or something like that, I've got Home Assistant to the point where, it'll alert me and so on and so forth. So, I shouldn't need to use their app, right? And,
yes, great.
And so this one hits me on so many levels, and it's really disappointing. And, I sort of, a part of me expected more from Google, but I guess, here we are, right?
I was reading a comment in, maybe it was the home automation subreddit. Someone was saying that, the Nest app, because with your thermostat, you can go back, I think it's in the past year, and view all your data and, your away home times and how your home's been, efficient at heating and cooling. You can only do that for the past 12 months, but with the current Works with Nest program, you could use IFTT or IFT to put that into a Google spreadsheet. And so then, people might have, Nest thermostats for the past 5 years, and they might be able to, do some cool, spreadsheet magic and say, this summer, how efficient was I at cooling the home compared to the last 4 or 5 years? But now you won't be able to access your own data from your own house because Google's effectively, restricting your access to your own data. And one of the funny thing is that, this has happened because Google's got been in a bit of trouble for privacy recently.
Yeah.
And they're sort of using this as their, hey, we're protecting your privacy by making things more secure. they're also locking you out of using your own data. And someone, I think one of the journalists asked someone from Google, "Hey, does that mean you're going to use Nest data for advertising?" And the Google employee said, "No, we will never ever use Nest data for advertising. We won't use that data at all." And one of the Google public relations people had to quickly stand up and correct him and say, "Look, yes, but we can never say never in this circumstance." Which just goes to show that Google's, remember when Google's philosophy used to be "don't be evil," and I used to use Google Inbox, and I'm sure a lot of people have had other services that have been killed off by Google. So I'm a bit salty still on Google at the moment, and this has just really rubbed some more salt in there for me. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when Google says "don't be evil," I don't think that exists anymore.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate. And the second one, I actually didn't hear about until like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, so this is one that snuck in for me as well. So if you are the owner of a Philips Hue V1 bridge, so that's the original Philips Hue bridge, it's the round one, not the square one that comes with, which is the one that supports Apple HomeKit. They will be removing cloud support for those bridges effectively April 30th, 2020. And from April 29th, so this has already passed, there is going to be no new features or enhancements added to those bridges, and only security updates are going to be pushed out. I know a lot of people, even looking at the Home Assistant onboarding stuff, that uses the whole, when you need to press the Philips Hue button, that's a version 1 bridge on that little icon there. So, it's pretty sentimental to me. Yes, so Philips Hue are shutting that down. The version 1 hub was released over 5 years ago, but I know it's, it's got to be out there. I don't think that I've had never needed to upgrade to a version 2 bridge. So I'm sure there's a lot of people still using a V1 bridge out there. So what that'll mean is from the end of April next year, you will not be able to use any cloud connected services. So you won't be able to control your Philips Hue light bulbs out of the house. You'll have to be on the local Wi-Fi. And that also means voice assistants. So Google Home and Amazon Echo are also being removed from that compatibility.
Yeah. So I'm a bit torn on this one. So I do get at some point you got to deprecate hardware. Right.
That's right.
I work in technology. I mean, I do this for a living, where I design and sell technology. Right. So I do get that part of it, but the other side of it is too, especially the more consumer side of the house, it's a lot harder it's a lot less palatable, right? When you're selling to companies that make billions of dollars and you say, hey, you got to upgrade some stuff, they get upset, right? Let alone billions of consumers that don't necessarily make billions of dollars each, right? And sometimes people just want little things, and which is fine. So at least I appreciate that Philips is saying, hey, you know what, fine. We're going to kill the cloud connectivity piece because, again, I get that there is a cost to them associated with that.
But they still have to maintain it for the version 2 hub, though. It's not like they don't have that ongoing cost.
Well, exactly, right? And that's exactly it, right? And so, I'm sure they'll play it off as, well, we want everybody to upgrade to the version 2 or let's say tomorrow, version 3, 4, 5, whatever. Because, we want everybody to have that latest and greatest thing, and here it's so much better, and blah, blah, blah. But the downside is, well, great, but not everybody can afford that, right? And that's the piece that they're not necessarily seeing. So, but with that said, I will say I do appreciate that they're not bricking the box, right? Like Logitech wanted to do, or actually they did.
With one of the, not the Harmony Hub, but they had an older version that they...
like a version 0 or for that, whatever that was.
Or Google with the Revolve Hub that just created them as paperweights. So,
exactly. So I mean, thank you guys for not doing that. I mean, I'm not saying this is ideal, but I'm a bit torn, right? And I do agree that you're still going to be. It's not that you're killing the service. Now, I don't know back end if it's it's completely separate. Cloud instances that are spun up for V1 versus V2 versus, what have you. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But yeah, I don't disagree with you though, Phil. It's you're going to be running this stuff anyways, so why not keep it, right?
So yeah, and just to confirm, like all the light bulbs are still compatible. So even if you have a Philips, like so what I did, and luckily this won't affect me anymore, I moved over to Zigbee to MQTT.
Yeah.
So that's all. So now Home Assistant exposes those to their voice assistants. So yeah, I don't have to worry about the hub. But the light bulbs, if you've bought Philips Hue light bulbs, they are all still supported. You can just get a new bridge, I guess, and pay it that way.
Yeah, and hopefully this doesn't affect people too much, and or maybe I'm hoping they do something like, I mean, at the end of the day, after the whole PR nightmare that Logitech had, they basically said, okay, you know what, bring in the old hubs and we'll exchange it and give you some credit, or give you a new one for free, or whatever it is, right? They had some kind of scheme there to say,
yeah,
okay, here's a trade-in program, right? So hopefully Philips can do something like that. If not, hopefully the community can pressure them to do something like that, right? Because I'd love to see that. And great, you're breaking something, then, at least give me a discount for the new one, right? At least make it a little more palatable than me having to start again. And to me, the biggest pain out of all of this is, I don't have any Philips Hues, but if I go from a V1 hub to a V2 hub, I have to go to every light bulb and resynchronize it, unless Philips has a migration method in there. And maybe they do, Phil. I don't know. I mean, you have Hues.
I don't think Zigbee works that way.
I didn't think so.
There may be a way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've had to reset my Zigbee to MQTT a few times, and it is a right pain in the bum having to walk around and reset everything. So yeah, that's another. Yeah. Especially those that might have reached. I remember seeing some crazy people on some Reddit threads that have already exceeded the maximum 50 light bulbs of Philips Hue products on V1 bridges. So there's got to be at least 2 or 3 people out there that are going to have to reset over 100 light bulbs when this comes in if they want to keep that voice connection. But,
and that's not the easiest task to achieve, right? Sometimes, especially if it's in if you've got a house with high ceilings and things like that, and your light bulbs are up in the ceiling. Well, have fun. Right?
Good luck.
Yeah. So,
but onto some happier news, I think.
That's right.
Some Home Assistant updates came out, and so Paulus has moved away from Ubiquity. He's now employee number 2 at Nabucasa. This will give Paulus and Pascal complete independence and autonomy to work full-time on Home Assistant. So I think that is very good for Home Assistant, and sort of protects Home Assistant as well, not being dependent on a third party as well.
Yeah. And the second point's interesting because, I mean, Phil, I think you and I have both been asked this a couple of times, or there's a lot of people that were kind of guesstimating, hey, we're up at the .9x releases. Is when are we going to see a 1.0 release? So in a recent blog post that Paulus made, they're working towards 1.0 to be released by the end of 2019.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that means that's almost 100% that I know there were quite a few theories out there about, okay, well, after 0.99, are they just going to do 1.0 and then go on and so forth? That's not going to be the case, I don't think.
I'm pretty sure we'll have at least a few releases in the 100 series.
Yeah, and thinking about it, which makes sense because a 1.0 release, I mean, for those that don't know typical software versioning numbers and things like that, a 1.0 release would imply that this is a polished kind of first release of all of the stuff that this is usable and consumable by the general public. And I mean, I don't know if Home Assistant is there yet in terms of saying that. I think it's very close. I don't know if it's there.
It's still version 1 as well. It's not like there won't be a version 2 or a 1.1 or something. It is still going to be. It's not like once you get 1.0, things just stop. And I think a lot of people are sort of afraid of that might be the case. Once we get to 1.0, that's it. Home Assistant's stable. Everyone walks away and goes home, sort of thing. I don't think that is the case.
Yeah. No, and I mean, again, it is a open source community driven project. So, I mean, I don't know if really that's possible for a project that's at this scale. Because I think people will still be like, okay, well, if you're not going to make a plugin for it, I'll make a plugin for it and just chip away at their computer and turn something out, right? And then do a PR and merge it back in, so on and so forth. So I don't see the Home Assistant community being, the entire community as a whole being like, all right, we're just going to stop, right? So, yeah.
And also, if you've noticed, this week we are back releasing the podcast in the same week as the Home Assistant release is landing. So 0.93 is also out the same day this podcast comes out. So that's because we've finally got some clarity on a new release cycle for Home Assistant. So it is moving to a 3-week release cycle. So the way it's going to work is there'll be 2 weeks of a Home Assistant beta, followed by a week break, which will have, the release after that. And then once again, 2 weeks will kick off, and then another week just sorting everything out. So I think that's going to give the developers, and Paul has already said to me privately, this is giving us an extra week where they don't have to do any releases. Because previously there was a beta on 1 week and then a release the next week. This gives them basically a whole week where they can just focus on just pure development, and they're going to be able to knock out some features a lot faster. So I think that's a fair compromise and a good move by the team there. So that'll be interesting to see, if the releases are going to get bigger. I'm tipping they will be. But Rohan, it really puts us in a bit of an awkward spot, and I'm not sure how we want to proceed either.
Yeah, so I mean, and again, we've been asked this several times. Phil and I were chatting about this maybe just before we started this recording, and I think what we're gonna do is we'll come up with a couple of options and we'll source it to you guys. You guys help us make that decision. One of the things that I want to make sure we look at is what does the community think is appropriate. Do we stay on this cycle? Do we change the cycle that we have right now? And essentially see where we go from there.
Yeah. So we'll create a poll with a couple of options on how you want to see. Do you prefer, maybe the podcast coming out the same day the release comes out so you can hear the release notes and all that, or maybe you don't really care about the release notes and you just want to hear our awesome guests. So we will have options in a poll, and links will be in the show notes on haspodcast.io. You can so take a vote and let us know what you think.
Yeah. Also, some really cool stuff. So Peter, who is in episode 3, so Peter does a lot of the floor plan modules and things like that. He's released a new floor plan Lovelace card for Home Assistant. So check that out. We'll post a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, that looks really cool, actually. He's done some awesome work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
All right, so speaking of new release, 093 is here. We've got some new features. First of all, won't affect many people if you're already using Home Assistant, but new users of Home Assistant, or if you're setting up a new instance of Home Assistant, there's a brand new onboarding process, which is going to make it a lot simpler. So previously, if you were to install Home Assistant, you would just enter your name, set up a username and password. Now, once you've done that, it will then take you to the next screen, will then prompt you to set up any devices that have been discovered on your network. So if it's discovered a Philips Hue device, there'll be a card welcoming you to, hey, you need to set up Philips Hue. This is the instructions to do it. Make sure you've got a V2 bridge, yada, yada. And also if it finds anything like Google Cast on your network, it'll prompt you for that. And this is once again heading towards that version 1.0 where it needs to be simple and easy for new users to come on board. So yeah, some great work being done on the UI for that.
Yeah, and it's funny because this is actually something I was talking about in a YouTube recording that I was doing, and talking about, hey, things need to be more wizard driven, and things need to, because at the end of the day, if it's not intuitive, people aren't going to use it, right?
That's right. Yep.
So, and as you were saying that, Phil, I was just watching the YouTube link that kind of walks through that process, and it actually looks really good. I think it's usable. So from a non-techie perspective, but then again, I also always have a techie lens on, so take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's good, and it's definitely a step forward. So, also another new feature this week is the Meteo alarm, or Meteo alarm. It's a new binary sensor which can be used for weather alerts in Europe. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
And also in Europe, Ascent Energy, which is a Danish energy company. Someone's found a way to integrate them. They've got an undocumented API. So if you want to get some energy statistics or usage into Home Assistant and use that provider, there's now a component for that in Home Assistant.
And more environmental related features this week, AmbiClimate, which is a AC controller. So it's for air conditioners, similar to Sensibo and Tado. They say it's powered by artificial intelligence, which, cool.
Everything's powered by that, though.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So now that can be controlled with Home Assistant. So if you're on the AmbiClimate system, then there you go. Bring it in.
Or if you're in the market for one of those and you didn't know it existed, because I didn't know it existed until, once again, looking at the Home Assistant release notes. There you go.
There you go. Google it and then see if you like it.
That's it. And some breaking changes. We've got the pollen sensor has been renamed. So Aaron Batch, who's been doing some awesome work on all the pollen stuff, is expanding the pollen sensors. So in the future, there might be actually more providers. So this one has been renamed from pollen. It's to Iqvia, IQVIA. So if you're using the pollen sensor, you'll have to go ahead and just update your config for that.
Interesting. So another break and change, the Nmap sensor will now add leading zeros for non-Linux systems. So what that means is basically if you're on Mac or Windows and use the Nmap sensor, essentially it'll add leading zeros to parts of the MAC address. So what that does is it makes sure that's consistency between different configurations, if you're sharing configurations between multiple different types of systems. Really, it should only affect Mac users where the entity IDs are generated from Nmap, which may change. So, yeah.
That's fair. And the final one we're going to mention today, there are a couple of others, but this one I think is an important one because it affects me and other Sonos users. If you are a Sonos user, the Sonos-specific services have been moved out of the media player component and then moved over to the Sonos component, which I think is a very good move. So now, for example, if you wanted to, set the sleep timer, instead of calling media player Sonos sleep timer, there'll actually be a Sonos set sleep timer service that you can use instead. And along with that, which I think we mentioned a couple of releases ago as well, any calls to those Sonos specific services will now require an entity ID. Previously they didn't, and they will just target all Sonos players in your home. If you want to specify everything, you'll need to specify that entity ID as all, just to make it a bit more secure. Yeah, Peter, this is your time to shine.
Good evening once again, gentlemen.
Hello.
So, Peter, I guess you've got a pretty interesting use case for Home Assistant, and I guess I'll let you explain. So, first of all, how long have you been using Home Assistant for and home automation in general?
Look, I've been playing with Home Assistant for about 18 months. At one stage, it was something to start tinkering with. I went and bought a Google Home Mini and a LIFX or LIFX Light Glow for a particular reason. And but I've played with automation of both home and my work related. I'm an electrician by trade, so I've done automation right through my adult career. So in productions, in mines, and whatever. So
wow,
yeah, it gives me something to tinker with at home, you might say.
Yeah,
sure. So you really like what you do, so you decided to do it at home as well as at work, is what you're saying?
yeah. I have a different. I suppose in the last few months, I've actually not changed careers. I get sick of doing what I do at work every now and then. Yeah. And I've gone a different way now, but I'm working in a crane industry. So, but I've managed to come up with an idea just in the last couple of days how I can use Home Assistant, even in that regards, by monitoring my location with me tracking, and then reading the weather reports for that location as I change, and sending me wind alarms. As you can imagine, you don't want. Yeah. So you can build it really. You can build automation, be it home, or you can use it in any situation if you wish. It's not. I don't sort of think it replaces people. It tries to make your life easier.
Right.
To be honest, there, Peter, I am a bit disappointed. I was expecting to be talking in a couple of releases about how you've automated a crane, and we'll be having that component in Home Assistant.
Yeah, let's not go there. Well, I suppose a lot of the building cranes actually are remote controlled these days, so they're halfway there. There. I don't really think you perhaps. Yeah, there's some scenarios I suppose you can imagine that would provide a bit of difficulty, but anyway, yeah. But let's cover what you brought up, Phil. Yes, the other person, or there's two other people in the house, but the reason why a lot of my stuff is done is the other adult in the house has what they call dissociative identity disorder, or what used to be known as multiple personality disorder. So that gives it. I don't call it problems. It's not actually problems. It gives you unique situations. Yeah. So that's more why we've got into it a bit heavier than other than me sitting there and tinkering.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. So can you talk about that a little bit, if that's okay?
Yeah,
I mean, what kind of
I'll for a lot of people, the simplest explanation, or the best way is, or the best one we use here when we sort of come out about it, or is there was a show created called United States of Tara, starring Toni Collette, and it was a series. It was a TV show. I think it was 2 series. That is what she suffers from, and in her case, she has in excess of 10 personalities. So you have what I suppose we call, and I'm no expert, and I don't mean to offend anyone, or different people have different opinions. We call it the host. So I suppose the body that was physically born is the best way of describing it.
Yeah.
And then in her case, she's suffered some traumas, and it was explained to us that the brain comes up to that trauma. The trauma happens and it doesn't want to deal with it, so it creates another personality, and you sort of lose that, or you don't lose it, but off you go. So, and we can relate back to a lot of the individual traumas. So The way I describe it to people is, if you had, I don't know what the equivalent of twins is, quadruplets after 10, but if you had 10 or in excess of 10 identical people standing there side by side, that's effectively what you've got. Everyone has its own personalities. Everyone has its own unique, walking, talking, mannerisms, age, and everything like that. Or certainly in our case, anyway.
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess and this is really, while your use case for Home Assistant becomes really unique, because for you, you're using Home Assistant as a very serious part of your home.
Yeah, that's right, Phil. And as it was initially described as you have a bad memory. Well, we've kind of, in our case, we've proven through different, or we're assured that that we don't have a bad memory, but it's one personality does something, and then for whatever reason they change to another personality. If the other personality wasn't present or wasn't in any way in focus, may not have known the previous personality has done something. So we'll just give you an example as one of them goes out and puts washing in the washing machine, comes back in, washing's going, may sit down, have a cup of tea, whatever, changes personality. The next personality may not know that washing machine's going.
Right.
So therefore the washing finishes, it may sit there till the end of the day, or till someone goes out and realises it's sitting there, because it's like your brother or your sister not telling you what they've done and you're expected to know. So, yes, it does give us, it's not, we don't say it's problems, as I like to describe it as unique situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of, and you've just used like the washing as a pretty, standard possibility. Yeah. But I guess there's some serious ones. Did the door get locked, or have I left the oven on, or the kettle? And a lot of people without these multiple personalities would have the exact same
yes
problems.
And we'll come to the door locking. Door locking one is one in our case. One of them has OCD or suffers from a slight case of OCD. So getting out of the house is walking out of the house. I don't have I locked the door. So if you're getting them off personality, just think of the OCD part of it. So we've done things. I'm waiting. I've got to say, I'm waiting to put some funds together to put the electric lock on. But yes, when she walks away from the house, it turns off everything in the house. We've got about a 50-metre radius because inside that she's coming back. But outside that, yes, it turns everything off. All the lights are off, the heater's off, and the door sensors, etc. But eventually, we'll put a like a electric lock on the door that'll actually lock it.
Yeah.
So it's ways of dealing with unique situations that can be, I believe, can be spread across, like individual, situations that everyone suffers.
So
absolutely, yeah.
So how what kind of, like, when you're designing for something like this, what kind of design considerations do you have to take? Like, so one of the things you mentioned was when the person might start a task and then again comes back and has no idea about the task that started, because again now I'm not sure what the correct terminology is. I guess a different personality has kind of taken over, right? Yep. So how do you deal with that? So one of the things you mentioned is
so what we do, Rohan, is we sort of look at I suppose it's we don't sit there and sort of hard code the problem in a sense. You play with the problem over it, it's just different things we've picked up, and then you think, well, what is the actual problem? And you work for that. So the problem is that the washing sits there, so we'll use that one as an example. So we come up with, we either need to tell every personality or everyone or whatever, in our case, that the washing's on, which isn't practical. So we detect that, we do it the other way. We detect that the washing machine is running. That triggers in Home Assistant, that triggers an in-bill.
Yeah.
And from there, once it's finished, it's detected as being finished. Just every now and then it announces there's washing in the washing machine. And from that, as soon as someone takes it out, doesn't matter who takes it out, they use voice command back, washing gone. And that clears in-bill. So
okay.
You look at your problem, I suppose. It's like you in a technical sense, or you just look at your problem. I work backwards.
Yeah. So it's almost like you have to train the person multiple times, and kind of say, okay, say wash done, or that kind of a thing, right? And
well, it's certainly in our case, it doesn't. You either have to train everyone, which that doesn't work because it's not really recommended that you. In my case, I can actually get them to change personalities, but that's not a recommended way, so we don't do that. Yeah. So we just make it that everyone knows, as we talk to each one, it's a simple message, and they all understand it. So it sort of works for them. It doesn't mean that I don't have to handle washing out, though. So,
yeah. Well, it makes sense, right? I mean, the analogy you used earlier was, let's say you have 10 identical, I guess, decduplets. Is that what it's called?
Yes, something. Yes,
right. You'd have to teach all 10 to say, "Hey, wash done," right? So yes. Same way, it's you're. So I mean, that makes perfect sense. How do you achieve? One of the things you talked about is you said, okay, well, when they leave the house, you got to make sure the door is locked, and so how do you achieve that presence of, hey, this person has exited the house, and whether alone or together with somebody, or how do you achieve that presence in your place?
Let's go back to any automation and any industrial, domestic, everything gets broken. So I refuse to tell anyone that everything's perfect. Something will always break. So
agreed.
In our case, what we do, the best we've done so far is we use a combination of Google mapping or Google, using Google tracking. We use GPS logger.
My apologies. I don't understand.
There goes the Google in the background. And I forgot about that one. And then when she walks away from the house, I do most of my automations in Node-RED. So as an add-on. So we just look for certain logics, like that the doors are closed, there's no detection inside. As I say, we will put certainly on the one main entrance door, we'll put an electric lock on there, because another thing is people walk out and sometimes don't take their keys. So everything's, sometimes you're combining a lot of problems into one, and nothing's perfect, but it's not as bad as it sounds. If you look at it overall, and we have you've got to have some fun with it. You don't take life too seriously, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in my eyes, it's just different design considerations, right? It's
exactly.
Again, it's like you said, it's like having multiple of the same person, right?
Yes. So if you forget it's the same body, all you do is imagine 10 people, or in excess of 10 people. So and if you look at it like a school, if you had a room full of school children, getting them all to interact and whatever is what you look at. But that's in our case. But there's other people with bigger problems and all that using design solutions and whatever won't cure a problem, but it makes life a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like you said, you've got to look at look at it from a fun perspective as well, right? I mean, it kind of gets your creative juices flowing, and to say, okay, how can I, we've got a challenge. How can I tackle that challenge, and how can I solve that problem, right? And I think that's a great perspective to take.
They sometimes don't like how I come up with some of the solutions. I've got Reveille, the bugle call of Reveille. If it detects both the other two people asleep before school, which it'll play Reveille to get them out of bed. So they don't think that's such a good idea, but it works.
Right. So out of all these automations and things like that, what's your favorite one? Look, you personally are either proud of?
There's a couple, but the one that we've actually used quite a bit, and it actually proved that it does work, is I use a surveillance system because the same person went through some domestic violence, let's just say that. So we have a surveillance system on the place, and I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'll say Exuma, which is spelled Xeoma, and there is a plug-in to display the camera for Home Assistant. Yep. But what we do is we use him for the movement. We pick up the movement detection out the front, and we randomise a delay before the front lights come on, and then how long the lights stay on for. So it actually looks like someone's gotten up, gone and turned the lights on, had a bit of a look.
Mm.
And we know it works because one of the neighbours in a couple of months or so ago had a bit of a scuffle out in the street, and we got woken up because the lights come on. So we thought the screaming and yelling had woken us up, but in the fact it was the camera system that triggered it. So yeah, that one was that. Yeah, it just gives the appearance of randomisation, if you like.
Yeah, it's almost like Home Alone, if you've ever watched the movie.
It is very much like that, actually. Yeah, very much like that.
Right.
We also have the recording of 5 various different sounding dogs that get triggered. So so now that you mentioned the Home Alone, it is very much like Home that. Alone. Yeah. So,
That's awesome.
So have you, with those cameras, have you done detection like it needs to find a human in the picture, or is it just purely on motion? If they detect any form of motion, do the lights?
At the moment, we're just using the motion with minimum and maximum size and whatever. Mm-hmm. It's again, I don't think I'm a huge fan of that particular piece of software. It's very configurable.
The TensorFlow.
Yeah, it's very configurable, but yes, it does actually have face detection and everything in it, and human detection, object detection. But I thought, no, I went off and tinkered with something else before I got back to that one. So it's still in the cards.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned before you've got, LifeX. Are you using anything else? So like Z-Wave or any doorbells or anything?
We use the Link, the Ring doorbell.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did try, and it's not. We did try a TP-Link Light Globe just as an experiment, but for whatever reason, we didn't have a huge amount of success with that. So I really like the LIPX. They seem to go really well. We use Filio PIRs as our movement and room temperature sensors. So, and then I have a combination of just Echo Spots and Google Minis. But I tend to use the Google Minis as announcements. With Node Red, I find that the Google Minis are brilliant for announcements and playing MP3s and very easy.
Mm-hmm.
But the Echoes, in our case, seem to work better for voice inputs.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially because, Google's sort of seen as the king for voice processing. Do you have your Amazon Echoes set to Australian English or using US English?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I think I did try changing them, but it as I said, I originally bought the Google Mini and was quite happy with that, and I just thought I'd buy an Echo just to try it so I can do a comparison as I do with most things. And I sort of then I've got 3 of each, I think. But the Mini's mounted in the I've got 3D printed ceiling mounts, so I actually recessed them into the ceiling.
That's cool.
And
wow.
And they they look sort of fairly nice. They don't stand out. They don't stand out as an intrusion.
Yeah, not sitting somewhere on a coffee table in the middle of it's in the way all the time. And
so I went. I sort of went looking for the Echo ceiling mounts a bit earlier tonight to fill in a bit of time. So
that's neat. That's I got some of those. So the girlfriend, I got her a couple of Google Home Minis. So I got a couple of the wall mount, not the wall mount, but the wall plug.
Yes, like on the PowerPoint.
So it just goes right in, and it's like one unit, right? So it's just a lot. I know exactly what you mean, though. It looks just so much neater and just so much cleaner than having a wire hanging out somewhere, and so
yeah.
I'm guessing, Peter, for your like home automation setup or your smart home in general, you really need it to be reliable. And I guess coming back to at the start of the episode today, we were talking about Nest and Philips Hue sort of breaking stuff. Do you have any concerns with your current setup of a cloud provider shutting something down in the future that could impact you, or are you trying to avoid those sort of things for that reason?
That's an interesting point. I won't mention who, but in the recent, in certainly the last 2 months, we have had an argument with one of the major telcos, major suppliers, and in fact we lost all. Mind you, I could have went and got a phone and hotspotted and all that, but we lost what we would consider our normal internet for about nearly 4 weeks. And it just pulled everything up, as you can imagine. As I say, we're certainly not the worst ones, but that's, to be honest, you can get around most things, but if you lose your internet connection, it in the current situation can pull up mostly everything. Internally it works, obviously, but you don't have your voice integration, and there are ways of doing it. But as I say, you sort of plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Because I'm guessing, and straight off, like all you said, so far you've got you had no internet, you've got your voice controls down, definitely. I mean, your Ring doorbell would definitely be useless. And
that's correct. And we rely on the Ring doorbell for security. It means if nothing else, you obviously don't have to go to the door to open it. So if someone's not feeling in the safest area, they're brilliant, be it Ring or be it whoever. It doesn't really matter. The concept of it is a brilliant piece of equipment, and it's so easy for anyone to set up and that. And we use it. But yes, without the internet, the whole lot just pulled up.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't think you can future-proof. I mean, companies are going to come and go. Obviously, there's different, there's ones that are going to outlast others, but yeah, I don't tend to look at that. I just I use what's available at the time for the best solution at the time, and then some of the things you just work out as it goes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I've been in breakdown, like I've been in productions and automation all my working career, so you just tend to flow with it. Some days you pull your hair out and you realise you've gone the wrong direction with equipment, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So do you have any, have you got any wish lists that you want to try and automate, or problems that you're trying to solve at the moment that you just
we're
sure of yet?
Yeah, we're as I said, we're looking at the front door, or the main entrance door, and then there's other things. We've got ourselves being both of us all of us here are country born, so we're used to having pets. So you think, okay, how can I let the pet in the laundry and still provide a secure house? Because most places have a hallway or something. So I've come up with the best I can come up with at the moment is a combination of presence detection in that area with perhaps an infrared beam above animal height. So yeah, there's things, but our biggest thing at the moment is I'd like to get the electric lock for the front or for the main entrance, and then that'll sort of give us the ability to check the doors, or at least lock them, even if we get down the main street. We can do it. So yeah.
Have you done much research into what electric door lock you want? Or I'm a fan. Well, I haven't had much trouble. I like using Z-Wave at the moment. Yeah.
So I think it was the Yale one. Had a combination of Z-Wave. You could also have your mechanical. As I say, I'm a believer in everything will break. So I like the Yale had also a manual key override.
Yes. Yeah. The last thing you want is the batteries to run out.
Well, I think the Yale one also has the ability you can carry a 9-volt. If your battery does go out, that has exposed pins on the bottom. I think that was the one I was looking at, and you can, certainly one of them did, and you can put a 9-volt battery on the bottom. But yeah, I know I go on, but everything will break. So the batteries will go flat. The Z-Wave will disappear, and it'll be bucketing down rain. So yeah,
all at once.
All at once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. It's always good to have that kind of key override, right? To say, okay, I know I've always got my key on me, and here we go, right?
Yeah, it may set off the barking dogs and ring the local security companies, but at least you can get in. You can at least talk to them when they arrive.
That's right.
From the inside of the house.
Yeah, you might leave the house again in handcuffs, but that's an afterwards problem.
That's we can deal with that later.
That's right.
Friends for life. So,
that's right.
So yeah, and we've got different things, and every day you look for something. But I'm a self-taught programmer. I've been programming in a sense. I'm fluent in Pascal, and so I'm always looking for something to challenge me. So nice. That was one of the reasons I went to the Node-RED. It's a little bit of a challenge, and the JavaScript is a bit different. So yeah, I'm always tinkering.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's funny. Pascal is actually the very first language I learned.
I actually think I'm led to believe that was developed as a teaching language, and I tried other ones, but I'm fluent in that one, and I enjoy it. So I tend to, up until now, write my own interfaces. I used to run house automation with with industrial PLC, which is a bit of overkill, but that's
just a bit. Yeah,
that's what was laying around at the time. And then you write your own interfaces because you're not trying to market it, or you're not trying to make it for 1,000 people. You tend to hard code it in yourself. So
yeah. Makes sense.
But I just enjoy a challenge.
Very cool.
And you didn't find Home Assistant too much of a challenge then, setting it up and all the YAML, getting used to that?
Even now, I check my configs. I'm not super confident with it, but I'm a lot better. I end up running 2 Pis from one end of the house to the other at one stage and had it talking between the two. And then just in recent, about 3 weeks ago, I rebuilt or reloaded the system. I did an upgrade. I think I went from, because of that outage with the internet provider, I missed a few updates. So I don't know what broke it. It's not a blame or anything like that, but it certainly didn't perform after I did or I missed something. So I thought, well, here's the opportunity, because most coders will know that you tend to write as you're going. If you haven't got a set plan, you tend to write and you add to it and you add to it and you add to it, and you end up with bits on there that you don't no longer use and whatever. So I thought, well, this is just a fresh install, and we started again.
I think everyone's been at that point somewhere. I definitely have.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times.
Yeah, so you tend to streamline it, and you know where all the experiments and the extra bits that you probably didn't need, but you've used to test, all sort of, you can do it a lot quicker the second time, and then you start again. But I've got to admit, I tell everyone to back up the data on that, but guess what I didn't do? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I do it 3 times a day. I added this, back up, added that, back up. So yes, but anyway.
That's awesome. Well, Peter, thank you so much for sharing your story, and best of luck with your internet connection, and hopefully you don't get any more outages.
Blips or outages, yeah. This is super interesting, so thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
No worries. Thanks, gentlemen.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@haspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
Don't forget to vote on the poll in our show notes for when you want to get a fresh copy of the podcast. We'll keep the poll open for a couple of weeks.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi.
For links to topics discussed, check out the show notes at haspodcast.io.